So I like the story aspect of the first half, but the second half is when Alec Baldwin gets a lot more into it. And it's just like...
Take that as you will.
Yeah, take that as you will, but it's like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Popcorn Bucket List. Joining us today, and I honestly can say I'm very surprised we got him in front of the camera here finally. Alex Peterson of Studio One here, my boss, Ryan's boss, the man himself, joining us here on PBL today. There's a very specific reason why we asked you to be. There's no movie top. I mean, you can talk about movies. We do talk about movies, but you are very much as I kind of try to stay behind the camera with stuff. I'm not doing a very good job of it because I've posted over 100 episodes of this show, but you really try to avoid getting in front of the camera. The only reason why I'd ask you to be on today is because you're a bigger weather nut than I am, and we're talking tornadoes. Also, because Ryan is still in New Orleans. So two reasons, essentially, I guess. But yeah, thanks for joining us here today.
You're welcome. This is the first time I've been in front of a camera in this studio since my old boss had me do a TV show when we first moved out here in 2015. 2015, man. That was 9 years ago. Yeah.
I graduated high school that year.
Yeah.
You feel old yet?
Oh, I felt old for several years. Thanks. You fired.
I can't believe you said yes. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, we're talking Twisters here today. Like I also mentioned, you're a bigger weather nut than I am. I think that's pretty safe to say.
Yes.
You kind of talked about how Twister, I'm using your words, not mine here, was ingrained into your memory. Tell us a little bit about that. What was your first memory watching Twister?
What year did Twister come out?
96.
It did come out in 96. How old were you in 1996?
I was not born yet.
Perfect. So in 1996, back in the good old days of, analog film and analog audio and all that fun stuff, I was 10. And I remember vividly going to this movie with my older brother, Zach, which, of course, you know Zach very well, because he was also kind of a weather nut at that time.
Yep.
And we went to this movie, and it's like I didn't know what to expect. I was just starting to really kind of get into weather at that time. Like, this is kind of some cool stuff because, you're 10, whatever. And I remember walking out of that movie theater like a changed person. Like, this is amazing. That movie was incredible. I want to work on the back end of this. I want to know. I want to see this kind of crazy weather stuff. And that was kind of the moment that it just kind of hit me. Like, yep, this is it. This was the changing factor of my life where I want to be a weather nerd.
And you're not alone in that. I've read articles and seen stuff where, like, for the storm chasing community, that was such a big deal because storm chasing was around, but it wasn't really. I mean, I would argue it's still not as well known as a profession as other extreme hobbies or whatever you want to call it.
Right, yep.
But that was definitely a huge thing for the meteorological community. What are kind of your thoughts on it nowadays? You kind of said it blew your mind and everything, and it's supposed to. It is an action movie set in a severe weather sort of environment. Knowing what you know now about weather and tornadoes, let's just kind of talk some of the inaccuracies or things that still hold up and don't hold up, so to speak.
Sure. So looking back at it now is obviously everybody's got better hindsight going back than they do forward. But at that time, I didn't really know anything about weather. I think that's the reason why it was so amazing to me that, like, I didn't understand. I didn't know better, basically. I had no knowledge to go into it. I think that some of the inaccuracies are, obviously some of the technology they used, even though it was 96, it's like even then it was kind of antiquated. Like, I think probably could use something kind of nicer than that, but whatever. But yeah, the cow scene, that one will never, ever, I will never. We've got cows.
But like that's also like one of the most quoted scenes.
It
like
is.
if any people who probably haven't even seen the movie know of that scene.
Exactly. And at the time it was hilarious because it's like we got dancing cows and they're, in this Ram pickup on a gravel road between two lakes. It's like, okay, well, I can see that happening, but you're not going to have cows spinning around you and your truck stays in one spot. I just don't think that's how that works, but it was memorable. So I give him credit. It's like sometimes you got to find that nugget and just stick with it. It was good. It was a well played out thing. But come on, that's not how that works.
That cow was either way lighter than it looked, or those twisters were putting off way more intense wind speed than they looked. Because should not have. No. Especially they were like ping ponging with the cow because there was like 3 little ones there, which again is not uncommon, or it can happen. It's not very often or anything like that. I don't know. The one that always kind of got me was, and part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is because recently, I think I told you this story, a couple weeks ago, me and my family took a trip down to Iowa. My mom was making kind of this big deal like, oh, they shot one of the scenes of Twister on this road, and I took a little video of it. And I won't show the full video on screen here because it took about 2.5 minutes for us to actually get to said point, because it was not a very well marked road.
Yeah, imagine that.
It was called Twister Hill, but it's the scene where they are trying to get to the top of the hill there, and it's like throwing boats and all these branches at them. But it's like the jumper scene where they kind of call it, where it's like it kind of dies down so quickly, and then it like you could just, and again, I'm not going to make fun of 1996 effects, even though Jurassic Park came out like 2 years earlier. We did better than this, people. But you could tell they just added the dissolve of, hey, here's the tornado again, and it like jumps from the ground up, even though there's like no ground circulation or anything like that. It just like disappears and then just reappears, and it's just throwing random huge chunks of debris, even though there's nothing there. And I can say that because I've driven that road. There wouldn't be a boat there. There's not a lake or anything in that area.
No, but you got to remember, I mean, the Twister went right through there in the movie. Of course there's not going to be boats left there. Well, they've all been destroyed. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough. Fair point. Let me ask you a question.
Okay,
though,
ask me.
Because there's a couple of scenes where the little sensors from the Dorothy go all across the ground. This happens like twice.
Yep.
How is that not a success? Shouldn't the tornado just be able to pick those up then still and just be able to put it in there?
Yeah, certainly should have.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
They didn't have Bluetooth.
I just wanted clarification because I wanted to make sure I wasn't just crazy thinking that one.
No.
I actually did think of another inaccuracy though that I do dislike in that first one. How many times they drive through cornfields?
Oh, it's true.
So easily.
Yeah.
Like it's just going through a dirt road.
Yeah.
No.
That's not how that works?
No.
Oh, even I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought it was that easy. But, we got to remember, they had a 1996 Dodge Ram 2500 heavy-duty diesel. So, I mean, this is kind of a big truck back in the day. That big old Cummins in it. Oh, man. It's a big deal, man.
Yeah, I guess.
It was a nice truck back
It was a nice truck. Too bad they wrecked that one there, though.
Yeah.
But
what about that yellow Jeep one, though? That thing got destroyed going through the little ditch thing that they were driving.
This is the other thing I think we've noticed in other tornado movies is how they don't really, they'll just pick up whatever. Doesn't matter the size. That's not how they usually work.
No, not usually. Science is a thing, but we don't have to follow science in movies, though, do we?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
No way.
I guess this brings us to sort of, this is a recommend show, so we will recommend a little bit here. The toughest part about this one is there are tornado movies out there. It's very hard to recommend any of them.
Yep, agreed.
And it's also very hard to find anyone who's seen multiple of them.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hence why I'm here
I
today.
asked you, and you've seen like 2 or 3.
Yeah, two.
And I'm up to like 4 now.
Cool.
Going on 5.
Does that count the Wizard of Oz?
No,
though?
it does not count the Wizard, because I don't count the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
Otherwise, then I would count Man of Steel as well.
Fair.
Because that one's got a tornado scene in it and everything.
Yep.
But no, it's gotta have at least 2 like actual tornado scenes.
Fair.
And people are gonna be like, well, the tornado shows up at the end of Wizard of Oz too. That's just the portal of it going to a different universe, whatever.
Exactly.
But there was another one you did talk to me about that you did kind of actually enjoy. Tell us a little bit about Supercell.
Sure. So Supercell, to be honest, I didn't really know anything about Supercell. The only reason I heard about it was at the beginning of this storm season. So end of March 2024, things were really starting to pick up, and I every once in a while when I got time, I like to watch the storm chasers that actually do this for a living, all of their live streams. And one of the live streams I was watching had a guy named Skip Talbot in it and was talking about how he was in this Supercell movie. And I was like, well, wait a second. They made a movie and put actual real life storm chasers that are like doing this for their profession in it. I was like, okay, well, I got to check that out. So went on to Hulu. I don't think it even had like a theatrical release. If it did, it was like ridiculously small.
Yeah.
So I went on Hulu, watched it, and it was like, no, okay. First of all, I was blown away when I saw Alec Baldwin in this movie. I was like, wait a second, this...
He has to pay for those court hearings.
Clearly, he needed some extra cash.
I'm kidding. This happened before all that, but
this is true.
There's been some updates.
Yeah, it's a thing, but whatever. That's another day for another discussion. So I was like, okay, cool. I want to see this Skip guy in this movie, thinking like he might be like one of the main characters in this movie, like... This guy's into science. He knows what he's talking about. This is awesome. Holy, are they going to finally make a movie that has some real life stuff? No. Nope.
How much screen time did he have in it?
He literally had 4.5 seconds of screen time, and he was the gas station attendant. And he was like, they're at a gas station with this tornado tour, and there's people everywhere. And one of the main characters in the movie was in line at the gas station waiting to buy whatever. And everyone leaves to go because, but there's a tornado coming, so they all leave. So Skip Talbot makes this hilarious, like, over-the-shoulder, like, shot thing to the camera, like, oh, well, I guess you missed that one. And that was it. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I watched this up, whatever. But I give him props. He made it in the movie, which is pretty cool. But the grand story of this entire movie is, I like the first half a lot better than I like the second half. Because it kind of tells the story of, like, you know, the kid's dad is big into weather. He has Brody Storm Labs, that he's trying to do scientific research on these storms. Goes out, of course, gets in an accident, gets hit by a tornado, dies, whatever. So now the kid, like, is devastated. Of course he would be. But then it transitions to later on in the future, 10 years, whatever it was later, where this kid is now, like, an early adult, maybe 17, 18, something like that. And he knows nothing about his dad. His mom and him clean houses for a living. Like, their life fell apart when his dad died, which is unfortunate. So I like the story aspect of the first half, but the second half is when Alec Baldwin gets a lot more into it. And it's just like...
Take that as you will.
Yeah, take that as you will, but it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. They've got some okay CGI moments, some okay, like the one I showed you earlier today where Alec Baldwin, his CGI part of that, we may or may not have laughed and then talked about like the 4 seconds of keyframes in Adobe Premiere that would take to make that happen, and then laughed a little bit more.
There's just certain moments in a movie where you feel like you watch and you're like, okay, either the budget ran out before they made this shot or the deadline was tomorrow.
In this case, it was both.
In this case, it was probably both.
Definitely both.
You bring up an interesting plot point in this one as well that I find interesting. There almost always has to be sort of this revenge aspect to these. Like, this is nature. This is weather. It doesn't care. It's not like it's gunning for you. It just happens. Right. But the same thing in Twister. It's like, oh, a parent was lost at a young age, and now they're like grown up to like seek. They never say to seek revenge because they know they can't, but they always add that aspect. I don't get why they need to put that in there. Because
who else would be stupid enough to get into storm chasing for no reason?
Plenty out there. They're out there. They exist. You talk about Skip. He's a real life person.
This is true. And he didn't get the grand feature that he should have.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I agree with you, though. You're totally right on this.
It's just, it actually surprised me. This is skipping a little ahead because we'll talk about twisters here in a little bit as well. But finally in this movie, they're like, oh, we're going to finally disrupt them. We think we can maybe stop them. It's actually amazed me that it's took us this long to get to that plot point. Because now it is literally like the tornadoes attacked us. Now we fight back finally.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When before it was always like, well, we just got to get ourselves in the area to study it and everything like that.
This is true. I can't wait for tornadoes on a plane to come out, though. That's going to be a great movie.
I think that already exists. I think that's Sharknado.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I think that does take place part on the plane. Or one of them does. It might be the second one. Well, it might be the second one, actually.
Okay. We'll go with it. I haven't seen it.
I guess if I had to recommend one other than Twister, and this is a soft recommend, Into the Storm. Because, again, this is with all natural disaster movies. It's like this is the once-in-a-lifetime event. but it's like 5 of them happening all on the same day.
Cool.
Because I'll never forget when I first saw this movie. I was at the drive-in. It was my family, my sister, and one of my cousins came along as well. And at this point, they knew I don't know if I'd been to college yet. No, because this movie came out in 2014. So I knew a little bit about Twisters, but I hadn't done anything like actual studying or anything like that. And I haven't necessarily since then, so I don't want to say I actually have credentials. But they knew I knew a lot about tornadoes, more than most. And so like every time something would happen within the movie that was kind of crazy, they would both like turn to me and be like, "Can that happen?" And I'd be like, "Worst case scenario, yes, that can happen." And I just said that like 5-6 times in a row. They were like, "Can that happen?" I'm like, it's like a 1 in 1,000 chance, but yeah, that can happen. And it all just happened in the same day. So it's a little bit different. It's a found footage movie, which I'm not the biggest fan of most of the time, but it at least is a little bit different. I did see one reviewer kind of talk about this. You could basically call this Joplin, Missouri, the movie, because that's essentially what they were kind of going for here.
Got it.
It happens during a graduation and like destroys a high school, which is what actually happened during the Joplin, Missouri event. So.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And also Sean Casey, filmmaker, Storm Chaser, could have probably sued them for copyright because they basically do the exact same thing he does.
Oh, well,
like
perfect.
They build a tornado intercept vehicle not made for scientific study, but for movie making.
Got it.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah, for legit, he actually did that.
A decade before that. Right. Like as I'm watching this, I'm like, they knew what they were doing, but they did just enough different where they're like they couldn't be.
So the difference was they didn't shoot it. They weren't designing this vehicle to be shooting IMAX film. It was just going to be regular 35 millimeter.
Exactly.
Film, right?
That's how you get around it. That's how you get around it.
I get it.
One last question here before we move on to the weekly preview. We both have talked a lot about tornado movies, a lot of stuff we don't like. If there was one thing we could do different, if either of us had to make a severe weather movie, what's one thing that you haven't seen that you would love to see, or is there something that's been happening so many times that you're like, you can't do that anymore?
Sure.
It's a cliche that you just no more.
Yep. And I had thought about this beforehand and I had a good answer, but in our talking here, I've come up with a second one now. And obviously number one, since we talked about it, is the cliche of the whole family issue of I need to get revenge. That needs to, we've done that. We can be done doing that now, please. Because really, that's not how it works for most people. I understand it's a movie and you have to have a plot. You have to have a story in order to keep people, to give that character a reason why they're doing this. But it's been done before. I think it would be really nice to see a movie that has something to do with weather. I mean, even if it's not tornadoes, even if it's like, hurricanes or something else that just has more of a science side to it. Like that's actually factual. Because I don't think we've seen a lot of real science and real fact when it comes to movies. And of course, it makes sense because you have to make a movie people are going to want to watch, right? It has to have that story aspect. But I think that's the one thing that's been missing. And I think nowadays, especially ever since Reed Timmer, extreme meteorologist,
we'll talk a little bit more about him when we talk about Twisters, I'm sure.
Good. But since he's had that whole show on, I think it was Discovery Channel or something, from that point on, it seems like storm chasing has really taken off with a lot of amateurs who maybe don't necessarily know what they're doing and know how to be safe. And now it's gotten to the point where nowadays, they have a thing called chaser convergence, where there's so many people on the road trying to chase a storm that they actually block the roads, which causes it to be horrifically unsafe. I think if a movie actually talked about that and actually showed that that's a thing, maybe that would help some people who are doing this for real life to maybe take it a little bit more seriously, because I just see that being a problem. And the safety guy in me is kind of like, it's kind of like, you guys are stupid. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that. You should know better. But clearly they don't. But I think more realistic of what it's actually like being a storm chaser and not just, this is a story. I mean, storm chasing is like 99% mindless driving and having no life, basically, for an entire storm season, for that 1% of seeing something severe happen. Now, granted, that's not going to make a very good movie, because you can't have a movie 99% that's just garbage of people driving around. So how do you find that balance? How do you keep it still interesting, but try and make it a little bit more realistic? And then second part is, with how much weather has become more extreme over the last couple of years, for whatever reason it may be, there's lots of different thought processes on that, but just, I think it'd be really cool to have a movie that even takes things to like you were saying, the other movie, like, can that really happen? Well, and it shouldn't, but those kind of things are happening more often. I mean, like this Hurricane Beryl that just came through.
Mm-hmm.
First Cat 5 ever this early. And I mean, it's crazy. So I think one that really talks about how things are evolving and how things are becoming more severe might open some eyes and might be like that aha moment like I had with Twister back in the day. Like, oh, is this actually a thing? Holy cow. Maybe we need to think about that a little bit more.
There was almost sort of the moment you're talking about in Into the Storm, because you had the professional like movie maker storm chasers doing their thing, and then you had the just people who were part of the school kind of running around thing. There was another group of characters where like their whole thing was like they were these adrenaline junkie Yahoo rednecks. Like that's the best way I could describe their character. And they just kind of blindly went into this tornado and they got sucked up by the tornado, and you kind of assume they die. And I know this is going to sound morbid to me, but I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like that scene because it did show like, hey, you can't just go headlong into this and expect it to be all fun. It just because you're having fun doesn't mean you're going to get out unscathed or whatever.
Yep.
And I was kind of, again, that sounds morbid of me, but I was kind of okay with that scene. And then at the very end, there's an end credit scene where they like ended up surviving, and it's like a whole joke again. And I'm like, you almost had it. You were there. You were so close of like teaching a lesson. You were so close of making your cake and eating it too, of like, we can have this awesome action movie, but also maybe learn some lessons. And it was just that end credit scene at the end where they're like, oh, dude, we survived. Oh, that's so awesome, man. Like, you can kind of picture the scene. I literally, and again, this is going to make me sound like a terrible person because, like, it's this funny scene of these guys surviving, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, come on.
You could have. Oh, hi, doggy. And they're back.
Something like that. So, that makes me sound morbid, but it was almost, it's exactly what you're talking about, which is like, okay, because the people on the roads, there being too many, like, there's stories. There's a lot of stories out there where then it becomes way more dangerous. Oh my God, that's a lot of enemies. There you go. What? No, he totally hit that.
Did it.
You done.
Did it.
You done.
You're a computer gamer, aren't you?
I'm not a gamer at all.
You have a PS3.
Yeah, that I use for racing games. Oh no, he's got a hostage.
It's alright, I'll save you. Hitting the button. Dodge. I gotta say it out loud.
Oh my God, that's a tank! I'll make mine real quick here. I want to focus one because it's always out in the field, and you kind of talk about how it's just a lot of driving. I want to see a severe weather movie that primarily is showing what is happening in the TV studio or within the offices where the radar is.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that sounds boring in theory, but you have to understand during these severe weather outbreaks, you're kind of in a setting like this. We're underground. We have no windows to the outside. I know you can't see that, but we don't know what's going on out there. And yet these meteorologists in real life, in real time, are making calls trying to warn people knowing that lives are at stake. So you have that sort of drama of, well, I don't want, because there's another sort of discussion to be had where, like, if people say warnings too prematurely or they say it too much, people take it less and less seriously. And then that becomes a whole other situation. So it becomes this moment of like, you're on TV, you're live, you have to make the call. And whatever call you make, life and death is at stake there.
Absolutely.
And I kind of want to see a little something like that, or people who are, the closest radar here is Sioux Falls. Like, I want to see what's going on there. How are they coming up with these decisions and these warnings and all that? So,
and I'll take that even one more step further. That's a really great point. I think it would be really, really cool to actually see a movie that touches basically all aspects of a storm. So basically one storm pops up and you see how it starts at the National Weather Service office, how that transitions to local media, radio, TV, whatever. And then how that affects the storm chasers, and then something happens. And then, what happens after the storm moves on? Because that's where the story is at, right?
Mhm.
Is how it affects people. Okay, well now let's take that one storm, and now you start to see it from the viewpoint of the people that got affected, and then you start to see it from the viewpoint of the firefighters and the cops and the EMS of how that affects them, trying to help them. And then you take it to another fact of now the emergency manager has to deal with this disaster, and how does the recovery process work? So really, you go from start to end, A to Z, of the entire process. So instead of seeing storm after storm after storm, it's just that one storm, but it affects so many people in so many different channels. I think that'd be really cool to see.
There are days of predicting and a lot of science to prepare for a storm that could sometimes only last 15 minutes. And then if that storm is severe enough, it'll affect weeks and months on end. You could almost, now we're just really brainstorming this here. You could almost do like a Dunkirk situation.
Yes.
Remember when Dunkirk was like, okay, here's from the perspective of an hour before this thing happens.
Yeah.
Here's a day, here's a week.
Yeah.
You could almost do it like that, where it's like sort of the layers of here's what the meteorologists were doing a week ahead of time.
Right.
Just for this one moment. Here were the storm chasers who went out. Here's the family who was an hour away or something like that. So,
Bingo.
yeah.
Can we trade?
Expect that on the channel sometime next year. I
Trade.
don't know.
We're trademarking this now. Hashtag TM.
No one take our idea.
Yeah.
That one's ours.
You can't have it.
That one's ours.
Dang
All
it.
right. Yeah, let's move on to the weekly preview here. We'll talk a little bit more about tornadoes here in just a sec, but there's some other stuff happening and premiering here this weekend. I don't know if you had a chance to check out the trailers. I sent it to you a little bit later than I usually do, so
I have not.
jump in wherever you can here, I guess. But
I'm just along for the ride, like the cows in a tornado.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Coming out Thursday, July 18th, My Spy, The Eternal City. This one's coming straight to Prime Video. This is the sequel to My Spy, which came out in 2020. I feel bad for that first movie because that was right when the pandemic was starting. And I believe it was trying to get a theater run there. But it was right when that started of like, okay, either your movie was out for a week, but then it had to get pulled, or it was like released that week where everything got shut down, where it's like, okay, everyone did not know what to do.
Yeah.
So the reason why I feel bad for it is because we never really got a good chance to see how this movie would do box office wise and critically wise. Not a lot of people was able to see it in the way it was. So I found it interesting how they announced a sequel, but I would have really liked to seen this one in the theater. But again, because of the situation it was in, you can't make that gamble because you don't know any of the information here. That being said, pretty much the whole cast from the original is returning to this one. This is a Dave Bautista sort of action comedy. A young Chloe Coleman, who's been in a few things. Ken Jeong is in this one as well. Basically, yeah, they're doing spy stuff, but this time in Italy. That's really the main thing you need to know about that one, I guess. So,
Nice.
yeah, did you ever, I know the first My Spy ended up on Amazon Prime. The few people who I know have seen it have said good things about it. Did you ever get a chance to see that one?
I have not yet. No.
Yeah, that was one that I had on my list for a while there because I did hear good things. And I think Dave Bautista is a really good actor overall.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously good at action. I think he's actually a way better dramatic actor than most people think. And he is pretty good at comedy.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah, hopefully this one gets a little bit more attention as well. But the big ticket item, Friday, July 19th, Twisters. This one is coming straight to theaters. The long-awaited sequel to 1996 Twister movie. You kind of mentioned this before. This is something a lot of other weather movies have been talking about, is how it seems like the climate for more and more extreme weather is actually happening in real life. This movie's kind of taking a note from that. One scientist enlists the help of a self-proclaimed tornado wrangler to help her possibly stop these twisters from causing more damage. I mentioned how Into the Storm basically stole Sean Casey's whole stick. Mm-hmm. This movie 100% steals Reed Timmer's thing, right?
Absolutely.
Like when that first trailer came out, like we didn't see it together, but like the first time I saw you, I think I mentioned it, and we both just kind of looked at each other like they're doing Reed Timmer, aren't they?
Yep.
Especially with the drone.
Yep.
Now, Reed has done flying projectiles, but he's never done fireworks, I don't think.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
There's still time.
Wait, yeah, just give it next storm season probably at this point.
Yep.
What are your overall thoughts on this trailer? Did you get a chance to check this one out?
You know, I did, and I've got high hopes. I really do, and I think maybe I probably have high expectations too. You know, that first movie really was kind of it set the stage for a lot, and a lot of people really like that movie. So I think the bar is set really high, and there's a lot to lose if they don't hit that bar and they don't hit the mark. I think some of us, or maybe a lot of us, will be kind of really disappointed and be like, oh, man, this should have been. Why wasn't it? But I guess time will tell. We'll just have to wait and find out. But I'm excited.
I think it's going to hit that bar.
I think
it's going to hit that bar. Part of it is the cast. Glenn Powell is very big right now. Daisy Edgar Jones, she's doing pretty good as well, I would say. Anthony Ramos, he's a pretty recognizable name as well. But there's another element that this occurred to me a couple weeks ago that I think we don't talk about enough, and that is sometimes a movie will sort of pre-release its full soundtrack, and it's got a lot of songs with a lot of artists.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't come out until the movie comes out. Sometimes they'll like push that before everything because they know it's a big deal.
Yep.
I remember my sister a couple of weeks ago, she's a big country music fan. She texted me. She was like, I know you got issues with this Twister movie, and I'll get to that in a second. But I'm so psyched for this just because of the music alone.
Wow, really?
She texted me out of, she never texts me out of the blue unless she like needs something or something like that. She needs help with something.
Like a good sister.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Love you. Anyways, but yeah, she was even like, yeah, she's been seeing all the artists that have been a part of this, and it does have a huge list of stars in the country music genre a part of this here. Yeah, I don't know if we've seen any hype like this for music since like Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Wow. What about Top Gun Maverick? That was a big deal too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't like a big deal. Like it had a full set list of songs.
Okay.
I'm talking about before Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was coming up, before people were like asking James Gunn about details, they're like, what songs are going to be on the soundtrack? What songs are you going to include here? Because there was so much thought into that.
Sure.
And here I think you have so many artists releasing new songs that people are like already kind of looking forward to seeing. They're already hearing them. And now they're thinking, well, it's going to be in this movie. That's another reason why I might go see the movie. I'm going to hear all these sounds now with an awesome tornado movie as well. So I almost want to call this, I almost want to shoot my shot here and say this is going to be the movie of the summer. If it wasn't for the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine weren't the next few weeks after that.
Fair. Yeah,
if it wasn't for that one, I would call this one the movie of the summer.
Yeah.
But Deadpool and Wolverine's probably going to do better.
It's going to be a boxing match. Ding, ding. Which one's taking?
There's way too much hype for that one now.
Yeah.
People have been waiting almost as long as since the first Twister to see Hugh Jackman in the yellow Wolverine costume.
Oh, man, it's going to happen.
Almost as long. The problem I have with the trailer, they show them running towards an overpass. I thought we cleared this up. In case I haven't said it before, don't do that.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that
They're
anymore.
not supposed to do that. And they're showing it in this big budget movie. And maybe we're going to find out, like, that's the scene where, like, they screwed up and someone, again, this is going to make me sound morbid, someone dies here. And
I hope so. I mean, as terrible as
there's
it
no
sounds.
way else I can say that.
No.
I hope the fictional movie character dies.
Ditto.
To show the lesson that you can't do that.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, there should be a lot of my worries will be tempered if at the very beginning of the movie they make some big like disclaimer at the beginning of like, do not do this. And no, it looks fun, but people do this professionally, and some of the best professionals die from this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need a disclaimer at the beginning of this. I know I'm sending that message out now. It's too late to get to Hollywood. But hopefully they put a disclaimer at the beginning of this. That's all I guess.
I hope so too, because it has now become just an adrenaline junkie's favorite thing to do, and it's dangerous. It's ridiculously dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Twisters before we move on here?
Other than I don't know when I'm going to be able to watch it yet, but I'm going to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to the theater to watch a lot of movies these days, but this one I'm carving time out. I will take vacation time if I have to go watch this.
PTO Twister movie.
Totally worth it. But yeah, I'm stoked. I've been looking forward to this ever since the first hint of it came out last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I put it on my calendar as soon as I saw the date, and it's still there.
Love it. Love the hype.
Thanks.
Also, a couple other ones coming out here. Find Me Falling. This one's coming straight to Netflix. It's a little bit of a dark romantic comedy is kind of the best way I can describe it here. Basically, a washed-up rock star wishes to find solitude on a Mediterranean island. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. I think it's like Cyrus or Cyprus. It starts with a C. I'm not good at world geography or international geography.
It starts with C, so that's Cool Island.
Yeah, there we go. It certainly looks like a cool island. He finds a house for a great price, but as anyone in real estate will tell you, if it's too good to be true, It's too good to be true. This is where the dark comedy comes into play, but I can't really say exactly because YouTube doesn't like that word.
Ah, yes. That's fair.
Yeah, so basically he buys this property and finds out this is not a great area, but he meets a lot of interesting people while in his exile, I guess you can call it. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this one. It does look like it has some romantic beats. It does look like it has some comedic beats, but again, I would say a lot of it comes from dark comedy. So if you're not into that sort of thing, probably not going to laugh at this one too much.
We all know Nick is into morbid dark comedy, so
I'm just morbid.
At least
I'm not laughing at the people dying due to the tornadoes.
Fair.
At least when I watched Twister and the one guy got picked up by the F5 and got blown up to smithereens, I didn't go like, ha ha ha.
Well, that's good.
I felt bad because I don't get why the driver had to get impaled. Like, wouldn't it have made more sense if the big pipe hit the jerk guy?
Yeah, it would have. But, This is movies.
He was just the driver. He was just following orders.
Well, exactly. That's why it wasn't such a big deal.
I felt bad for him, though.
Well, good. Then you're not too morbid. You made up for it. Karma's on your side.
I do have a soul.
You do.
But last but certainly not least here, let's wrap up with one more movie here. Another one that I kind of have a problem with there, actually. Skywalkers, a love story. No, this is not a romantic comedy set in the Star Wars universe. I was a little disappointed about that.
Oh, man.
No, this is a documentary about a real-life couple that do this thing called roof-topping. Terrible name for the activity. I think Skywalkers works better.
Yeah, yep, I would have to agree with you on that one.
So apparently this is a thing. People will essentially break into these skyscrapers and will take pictures in, I would call it dangerous situations. You're like on the ledge of these buildings. You're way high up. You don't have any safety harness or anything. And this couple, they're in love, so they take like romantic pictures and all that sort of stuff for Instagram. I just want to clarify before I say anything else. This is illegal. They're breaking into these places, and Netflix is producing this documentary of a crime.
Well, it's all National Treasure's fault. It's okay.
Yeah, I guess.
But anyway, continue on.
I'm just saying, as much as we talked about, it's dangerous being an adrenaline junkie as a storm chaser, that's, as long as you're like abiding to road laws, that's not illegal.
Correct.
So as long as you're safe and abiding the rules, you're fine. This, they show them like hiding from people, and I almost partially feel like it's almost staged or whatever. I don't know how much I believe into this, but maybe it's because, again, what they're doing is illegal, and they're willingly recording it. And Netflix is openly producing it in these general awesome drone shots.
Yes.
That makes this look glamorous, and it is dangerous. And I'm like, how is there not more of an uprising on this one?
Did we not learn anything from the series Storm Chasers on Discovery Channel?
I guess not, because I'm baffled how this pitch went. I don't know how these people aren't arrested. Because they're producing the evidence themselves.
Just give it time.
Breaking and entering.
Just give it time. It's gonna be great. Well, now I
feel like I'm missing something here, though.
Probably, but it makes me kind of want to watch it now. To be honest.
Oh shoot! Did I bring more attention to this than I?
No, they did that themselves. That's fine.
Yeah, but I could have just not included it in the outline, and then you wouldn't have even known.
I'm glad you did though, because now I'm gonna want to watch this. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk much more about that one because, again, I'm just getting too mad at that one. I
Fair.
Rant over. We're going to cool off now. Anyways, let's wrap up this show like we usually do with some number one recommends. I know you said you don't go to the theater, unfortunately, too much just because of your schedule and everything, but is there any TV show, anything you've seen recently, read, played video game, anything
so
that you would like to recommend?
There actually is. I was really, really surprised at this one. Under the Bridge on Hulu. It's a 7 or 8 episode series based on a true story. It's kind of out of my normal what I typically watch. And I don't know how this popped up in my recommends, but I was like, whatever. I mean, it looks interesting. So I started it. I'm very surprised. I'm really impressed. It's a Hulu original, but it has ABC that produced it.
Is it a sequel to Under the Dome?
I don't know.
The fact that you don't know either says a lot about how confusing Under the Dome is or how confusing this is.
It's both.
Okay.
Trick question. But no, I've really been enjoying it. It's actually really well shot, really well produced. The story is surprisingly, it's quite morbid, but I was very surprised at how good this is. And then the only other one after that is also on Hulu. It's an FX show called The Bear.
I have heard a lot of good things about The Bear. Yeah,
The Bear. It took me a couple episodes of like, I don't really want to watch this, but I'm really glad I stuck with it. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. So that's what I got.
My quick one I'm going to do here is Horizon and American Saga. I didn't have the highest hopes going into this one just because of how long it is. It is a 3-hour Western epic.
Oh, wow.
That is apparently part 1 of 4.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah. So you kind of, and look, am I going to say this movie has any real resolution at the end? No. Am I going to say, was this a 3-hour movie just to set up the other movie? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way the movie tricks you into actually being entertained is there's essentially 3 subplots. There's 3 like separate groups of people and characters that finally towards the end, you're like, oh, they're all going to meet this or end up in this area called Horizon, which is this new part of the frontier. And so as soon as you're almost bored with one storyline, it like jumps into the next one. And then you're like, oh yeah, I want to see what's new with these guys.
Nice.
Would this have made it better as a miniseries? Probably. But they're kind of into it now, so they really don't have any choice. They did already pull part 2 because of the low box office. From what I've read, they do still plan on releasing it, but the report is they want this movie to be out for a little bit longer to hopefully gain a little bit more of a fan base.
Sure.
Because I did think August was pretty soon.
Yeah.
Considering how this was coming out in like end of June.
Sure. Yeah.
So
you're right.
I think November would be a good spot for it.
Yeah,
really.
probably.
But yeah, if you got the time, and if you like, here's my final thought on Horizon. If you like westerns, you're gonna love this movie because you get 3 for 1.
Ooh, but
you're paying 1 ticket and you get 3 essentially stories.
True, but it's 12 hours.
No, I'm talking just in this movie. You get
just the
3.
first
You
one.
get 3 essentially, like I said, groups of people. So you're essentially getting 3 different westerns.
Got it. Okay. I get what you're saying.
So you're getting 3 for the price of 1.
Well, you know what? In today's economy, that's worth it.
That is saving money right there, folks.
Jackpot.
That's what PBL does for you. We help you save money.
Oh, yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Popcorn Bucket List. Before I do anything else, got to give a special shout out to our friends over at Minnesota Sports Live. Their 200th episode should be out right now if all is going according to plan. I believe it came out this Wednesday. So go and check that out. Tell them that we sent you. You won't get any prize or anything from that, but I'm sure they'll appreciate it. But Matt and Paul, if you're out there watching, here's to 200 more, my friends. Congratulations, guys. Truly is an awesome accomplishment there. For myself and Alex, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you at the movies.